Welcome to In the Know with Erin Glow, a podcast bringing you information and inspiration from people in all walks of life. This is competitive eater Michelle Lesco. Welcome to In the Know with Erin Glow. I'm so excited about today's episode because I have with me incredible competitive eater. She's ranked number 9 in the world by Major League Eating, and she's the winner of the women's division at the 2021 Nathan's Famous Hot Dog Eating Contest, Michelle Lesco. Yay, Michelle's here. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Of course. Now, you and I go back a bit. We used to be old friends. So that's...
Yeah, a long time.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you on because of that reason, number one. Yeah, you're actually an older friend of mine who I met when I lived in Tucson, Arizona. So when I was coming up with ideas for episodes for the podcast, you were on my list. And it's funny because I decided to dedicate the first 3 episodes to a social anxiety disorder that I struggled with as a kid. And what ended up happening was when it came time to pick the topic of the 4th episode, which is this episode, it just so happened to coincide with your big Nathan's win. So I'm just so grateful to have you here. And I think it's a really cool story, your story in particular. And I'm just going to tell the listeners a little bit about how we met and the background of that. And then we'll dig deep into the goods of your story. So I ended up moving to Tucson from Boston about a month after I graduated college, and that was back in 2008. I actually moved there in an attempt to make a long-distance relationship that I was in work, and after that failed within the first week, I found myself feeling all down and out, and I wasn't sure what I should do, but I decided instead of packing my bags and going back home, I wanted to make the best of this new city and see what it had to offer, even though I knew absolutely no one in it. So what I did decide to do is I got a full-time job, but I also decided on the side to use some of my music promotion skills that I learned in college and attempt to start my own independent music promotion company. And I wanted to help local bands in the Tucson area. So one of the bands that I ended up working with was a band called Reminisce there. They played a charity show that I put together. I think it was the December that I moved there, so December 2008. And then I started to go to their shows. And I was telling people about them, trying to get that promotion out there. But because I had a deep desire to make friends at the time, I decided to kind of overstep my professional boundaries as a promoter, and I was taking their invitations to go to these after parties after the shows. This is where Michelle came in, and this is how I met you, Michelle. You were a friend and a fan of the band, correct?
Yeah, so I met Race You there because I was working at AmeriCorps at the time, which is an organization kind of like Peace Corps, but not overseas. And one of my long distance coworkers in this group that was putting together a governor's conference on volunteerism came to me and she's like, "Hey, I'm going to this concert and this guy goes to my church and he plays music there and he invited me out. Will you go with me so I don't have to go alone?" And I was thinking, oh, great, church band music, sweet. Yeah. Let's do this. But there was alcohol, so I went. And there's 2 groups. There's this solo act that was hilarious and like almost like a wedding singer in his like angry singing. It was just bizarre to me, and I thought it was funny, and I grabbed a CD. And there was Race You there, and I grabbed their CD as well. And went on. This is in the days of MySpace. This is how old Erin and I are. So I went on MySpace to find both these bands or whatever, and ended up becoming MySpace friends. And it turns out that these guys in Race You there are pretty funny. So I would make my snarky comments at some of the stuff that they would post, and they would always come back with something equally snarky. And I'm like, these guys are cool. And it took me about I don't know, it's probably like 6 months until I went to a second show. and then just became really good friends. Like over those 6 months, became good friends with all the different members via like our weird internet interactions, and so came out, met the friends and the girlfriends, hung out, like they're all just interesting, funny people. So we just like clicked and hung out from there. And then you came.
Yeah, yeah. So like I remember too. That's how I found them too. I was just looking up. I found some kind of directory with local bands in Tucson, and I just randomly clicked on a few, and they were the one that stuck out. And it was because of their MySpace. They had like it was like they had a cool MySpace, and like, oh, these guys. And then I listened to the little music clips they had on there.
They lived up to their slogan, "MySpace is a place for friends." Like it worked out.
It did. It used to be the coolest, and now it's like nothing. But it was.
I went on MySpace just out of curiosity a couple of years ago, and I'm like, "What is this like dystopian hellhole that they've created?"
Yeah, I went on there too, and I was wondering because I was like, if I can remember my password, maybe I can see all the messages that I had, and they like deleted everyone's messages.
Yeah, that's why I went on too.
But yeah, so they were the OG of social media, though, for sure. Yes, I came in because I started going to these parties that they invited me to, their after parties that were wild, let me tell you. It's funny because when I think back now, I'm like, oh my God, I could never have the energy or the stomach to drink like we drank and to stay up all night, like do that
Yeah,
now. That's, that was like, we're talking what, 13 years ago? It's so
yeah.
crazy.
It's exhausting to think about.
Yeah, and I never partied in college. So when I moved there, like right after, and they started doing all this, I'm like, oh, this is great. I've never done this before. This is fun. No wonder why people like to party. So I just started doing it too. I mean, we were all responsible. It wasn't bad partying, but it was, yeah, it was fun, but it was exhausting. And yeah, you have to be young to do that.
The amount of sleep that I lost over those several years is incredible.
It is. It was like we got up and did it again. It was like we just needed a few hours, what, maybe an hour sleep? And then we
Yeah,
were
and
cool.
then you, like, sluggishly move throughout the first hours of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, you, like, need that caffeine boost a little bit, and then you're
Yeah.
good. Yeah, so that's how I met you in that atmosphere. Uh, but it was fun. I mean, we were young and it was fun, and it's so funny to say we were young, like, it's so long ago. It doesn't like, it kinda was kinda long ago, but it doesn't
Yeah,
seem
we're
long
old
ago.
now is what that means is
Yeah, like, 12, 13 years, like, that is insane. Because in a way, it feels like yesterday, but
Yeah,
I guess that's what being an adult is. They all say it, and now we're living it.
yeah. It's losing track of how many years have passed since, like, your good times. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's just a different dynamic when you're an adult, but I don't regret anything. Back then, I thought it was fun. We made a lot of good friends, and it was a fun time.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah, so in the midst of all that, all right, I'm going to tell you, I remember you being pretty different from a lot of the other people that we'd hang out with. And I don't just mean the amount of food you could put down. We'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, I do remember you being pretty different. You were different in the way that you just seemed very nonchalant about things, and you were very like stress free and drama free. And maybe you weren't like that personally. I don't know how you were like outside. I mean, we hung out outside that group too, but I don't know how you were like alone. But this was my observation of you. You just didn't focus on the negative things. There were a lot of negative things that happened, like with all those people, all those personalities together. We'd have some crazy things come up, but you just kind of stayed away from the drama, and you were like everyone's friend, I remember. And everyone wanted to be your friend because of that, I think. That's my perception of it. But
I try to be pretty chill.
yeah, you were just cool Michelle, hanging out, being kind and nice to everybody. And you were like, you treated us all equally, and that's honestly what I remember about you when I think back on that. I'm like, oh, she's just cool, Michelle. She was always the drama-free one. She was just mature and doing her thing and having fun, and it was cool. So you also helped me with my promotions company, I remember, and you were just cool like that. We'd have fun times and just being young. It's funny because I think we had a sleepover at my house one time. I found a picture not too long ago, and it's you. me, and Sarah, and we were all just like I guess you call it a selfie now. Back then, that selfies didn't exist, right? It was just a picture of us. But we were in wigs. Do you remember this? We were in wigs, and
I
you
I kind of remember this.
we were in wigs, and you were, like, looking down at my head, and you had your tongue out.
You have to send me this picture. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I will. But when we used to hang out, the thing I remember when I look back is what I think this is now known as the start of your impressive eating challenges. So I remember us going out to eat sometimes with friends, and you would finish other people's meals, or someone would dare you to eat a large amount of something, and you would do it, but you wouldn't just do it, you'd do it quickly. I think it was maybe even the last time we hung out before I moved away. You ate something. I don't remember what it was, but you ate something and it was so quick. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, like what? Oh my, I just couldn't believe that was even possible. But
To put this in perspective, this is when I was in AmeriCorps and I was super poor and starving all the time. So, so that may have had something to do with it.
so that makes sense. Yeah. Well, at least you're grateful for the food, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah, you didn't let anything go to waste. And I don't mean that in a bad way. That's a good thing.
yeah.
So, yeah, we were all amazed. And I just remember us joking too when you did that, that you should become a competitive eater. And it was all just very tongue in cheek, whatever. And then cut to about, let's see, today, about 12 years later. And here you are, ranked number 9 competitive eater in the world, and the women's winner of the biggest American eating challenge, Nathan's hot dog eating contest, eating almost, well, you said you ate 31 hot dogs in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Uh, it's been a crazy ride, and it was all totally unexpected. Like, it just stemmed out of like, uh, you remember Andrew and Alex, both members of Race You There, and
Yeah.
they had been, and I swear to God, you were still in Tucson for this, but maybe you weren't because it had to have been 2009 or 10. I want to say 2010, but Man versus Food had Lindy's on fourth, on the as one of the challenges he did. And so I never saw that episode, but Andrew and Alex started talking about it for months. They're like, "We're going to go try this burger challenge." It was on Man versus Food, and I'm like, "Okay, when you guys go, I want to watch you cuz that sounds awesome." And for months, and then we finally get down there, and both of them chickened out. Alex is like, "Well, I'm not really that hungry. I'm kind of a little hungover," and like that's what both of them did. And I was like, "Eat the stupid burger," because I'm so sick of hearing about it. Because they've been closed on like Mondays, and we had tried to go down there and like just eat the stupid burger at this point. And so they're like, "You eat it," and I was like, "Fine, I'm gonna eat it, you babies." Like, and I think I convinced Alex to also try it, but I only remember that because we went back to Steve's house afterwards, and he still had like 8 of the 12 patties like in a to-go box that he brought home with them and ate over the next couple days. But yeah, I only finished it so that they would feel bad about themselves because that's the kind of person I am. It was also stupid because like that was the kickoff, and then it was just random friends telling me, "Hey, go try this thing. Hey, go try this thing." So there was like a dessert challenge, and there was like another burger challenge in Phoenix that my friend Christina like was working with some paper that put it on, and then eventually it was, "Hey, Tempe has this hot dog qualifier for the Nathan's hot dog contest. Like, you should try it." And I was like, "Well, I mean, I'm curious how I would do," and so I just did it, and the rest is history.
Wow. Yeah, I think I remember seeing the first one that you did to make them feel bad. I think you posted that on, I wasn't there for it, but I think I was still in Tucson, but I wasn't there for that. So how many competitions would you say, or do you not know, is it too many, would you say you did before you entered the first Nathan's?
It wasn't that many, and it's funny because, like, that burger challenge was the one that kicked it off, but it wasn't the first food challenge I had ever done because 'cause I'm a competitive jerk. So, like, I would try things. So, like, over the years, I've remembered, like, had these random memories pop up where, like, I did this spicy burger challenge while visiting my uncle when I was, like, 18. because he
Oh,
didn't think I could eat like a ghost pepper burger, and I'm like, yeah, I can. And there was like other random stuff, but from the time that I ate that 3 pound burger to the time that I tried the Nathan's qualifier, I probably only did like 4 or 5 different things, that people just told me to go try. Uh, yeah, maybe, and I don't even know if I finished them all, like, I there may have been a couple I failed, but it was always like, "Yeah, I wonder if I could do that, I'll go try it," like, why not?
how'd you find out about the Nathans? How'd you get to apply for it?
The burger challenge in Phoenix that I did for I think it was Phoenix New Times that Christina was working at that hosted this thing. Um, it was when I was there, it was me and these 2, like, big guys that looked like they probably played football or something, and I had already done the Lindy's burger, and so I was telling them, like, "Look, learn from my mistakes, we gotta let this cool down before we start eating it, or else you're gonna destroy your mouth, the steam that is gonna continue to steam in your stomach, and you're gonna be more full, and you're just gonna feel awful." And they kind of like humored me for a couple minutes, but they're like, all right, we're ready to eat. I'm like, we should probably still let it cool down. And they're like, no, no, it's fine. And so the second we start eating, they're both like, oh, oh, hot. And I just threw a bunch of ice on mine and like just ate it. And so, I was done in like 3 minutes, and they continued to eat for the next like 35 minutes and finally gave up. But anyway, so I write a blog about it, and this random person from the internet who's now a friend of mine, Ryan, he saw my blog and he's like, "Hey, there's a Nathan's qualifier in Tempe. I think you're close to there. You should go try it." And this is in 2010. This is the year before I actually do my first qualifier. And I'm like, "Well, I haven't signed up." He's like, "It doesn't matter. You're a girl. They'll let you in." And so I'm kind of like, maybe I'll try it. Maybe I won't. So I drive all the way up there, but then I kind of got lost going to the Mills Mall, and I ended up just visiting friends instead that day. So the next year I was like, all right, I should try this thing. And some more people were telling me to do it. So uh I decide, all right, I'm going to register. I'm going to go do this. And like fortuitously, I did it that year and not the year before, because 2011 was the first year of the women's division. So if I would have gone in 2010, I probably would have come in second to Eric Denmark, like I did in 2011. Eric Denmark had been doing competitive eating for like years. And so he won that one several times in a row. But if I would have done it that first year, I would have come in second. I wouldn't have gotten the trip to New York, and it would have been probably been a one off. And I would have been like, well, I know how many hot dogs I can eat. I'm done. Like, so it was just like random, coincidence that I missed out on that first year that someone told me to go. I went on the year I did. I got the free trip to New York. I came in fourth at the finals because I still didn't know what I was doing. I just, went for funsies. Um, and it just kicked everything off. I do remember Denmark though. He's one of my really close friends now, but he was just this freaking weirdo at the time to me, because I was doing this interview right afterwards where I'm like hanging my head in disbelief basically, while they're asking like, "How did you prepare for this?" And I'm just like, "What's like, do people train for this?" And he looks at me, he's like, "Yeah, people train. It's a real sport." And I'm like, "Who the hell are you, you weirdo?" Uh, but after my first year at the finals, I was like, okay, no, I see where he's coming from, because I came in fourth and I probably could have come in, higher than that had I actually prepared. And so it was like when I used to run cross country as a kid, I'm like, why am I not training harder? I could beat these people if I just did something. So yeah, at first I thought he was a total psychopath, but then I was like, all right, he's got a point. Like, you don't like losing to people, so I see where you're coming from, dude.
Yeah. Wow. And the rest is history. Wow. So, how did you feel like the first time you did the Nathan's contest? Like, were you like, I can't believe I'm here right now? Like, what is this life?
Well, at the qualifier, I just like was like I wanted to know how I could do, and so I went in, didn't know how to eat a hot dog. So first bite, I like semi choke on it, because I took too big of a bite. Burger, if you squeeze your throat, it kind of smashes the burger, and you can swallow a piece that was maybe a little too big. But hot dog, not exactly the same. So I like got a little bit slightly backed up and mildly panicked, but if you stay calm, you can usually get stuff down. So, anyways, at the end of that one, I felt terrible. I ate as much as I possibly could. Like at the qualifiers, it's weird because anyone can sign up. So at any professional MLE event I've ever been to, there's never been a single person who, I take that back. Maybe one person has thrown up in the 11 years I've done it. But at the qualifiers, these random people who have signed up, oftentimes there's a reversal of fortune, as we call it. So my very first qualifier, I'm sitting there after the contest, full and nauseated, and I look to my left and someone is thrown up. And so I look to my right and someone else has thrown up on the back of another person who has then thrown up. And it
Oh,
was just like this nightmare. And so I just looked down and like put my hands around my forehead to like block my view. But that was my very first experience. But at the finals, it was just surreal. Like they paid my way out to New York. They put me up in a hotel. I met these weird people. I pretended I knew who they were because like I never followed competitive eating. So you meet Joey Chestnut, who's ranked number 1 in the world. You meet Pat Bertoletti, who's ranked number 2 in the world. And you're just like, oh, these are cool people, but they obviously think I know who they are already. So I should probably do a real quick Google search of some of these names and think about who I'm talking to because I feel bad that like I don't know anyone. But so it was just a weird experience, but 4th place came with $1,200, I think. Maybe it was less at that time. Uh but like I had always wanted to go to New York and I had never been. I'm like, if they're gonna pay my way out, like I will keep doing this. This is awesome. But I did feel like a jerk for not training right after the contest was over.
that's so funny. So you like kind of fell into this. Some people are like, I'm gonna aim to do this. You're just like fell into it.
Yeah, it was just my curiosity, like being competitive nature, wondering if I can do things that like people bet you to do or challenge you to do. And so it was just like a weird spiral of events.
Wow. That's the cool part about it all, I think. Because, yeah, when people aim to do it and they get there, that's cool that their dream has come true. But your dream was a dream you didn't even know you had.
Yeah, it was very weird.
Okay, so how does one prepare for an eating contest? I know a lot of people may not understand that competitive eating is actually considered a sport and it does take certain skills and preparation. As we were just talking about, you've learned it's not just shoving food in your mouth, there's technique. Tell us about that. Like, how do you prepare?
So normally on a normal pre-COVID year, for the Nathan's contest, that's the one I prep the most for. Like some of the other contests, like if it's oysters or crawfish or something, like technique heavy as far as using a cocktail fork or like, trying to figure out how the hell to get oyster meat out of a shell. I'll train for those with the food in kind of smaller speed runs because it's more like just trying to get technique down. But for Nathan's, you go all out. It's a Super Bowl of competitive eating. So normally I would have a qualifier either in April or May of that year. The contest is July 4th. And so I would start training before the qualifier. I would keep training like weekly all the way up until the contest itself. But that said, I got myself 2 years out of practice because of COVID.
Oh,
The last, besides this Nathan's, the last like major contest I was in was Nathan's of 2019. Like I had been to some invite only smaller things that I didn't really train for, even though I should have. Like just because you're like I'm a teacher by day, it's the middle of COVID, life is exhausting. But when you're stuck in your home, it's so demotivating. Like if I have 1,000 things on my plate to go out of the house and do, I can get them all done. But if I'm stuck at home and just need to do a load of laundry, it's probably going to be a week until I can motivate myself to do it. And so training was kind of the same where, I finished my teaching year. I was 99% sure that this contest was happening because they made it happen in 2020. I unfortunately couldn't be there because of COVID travel restrictions, but I should have started training in April. And so, June 1st rolls around and I'm like, what the hell am I doing? I need to start training. Let me open up this fundraiser so that people give me a reason to like sit down and do this, these practices. And I did 7 practices, 8 practices in the month of June. Um, and those were all in basically the first 2 weeks and the last week of June because I had to take a week off for vacation with my boyfriend and his kids. So at some point, I was doing a training with hot dogs every other day to like catch up to the fundraising goal stuff that I had. But for me, since I was so far out of practice, it was all about relearning technique. I couldn't remember, like muscle memory, how I ate hot dogs quickly. And so I was trying different things. I also had torn my ACL snowboarding in February and had surgery in April. And so I'm still not allowed to like jump or twist. So, like, little things throughout the contest that you would normally do, like, are off the table, literally. Um, so basically reinventing the wheel as far as like how can I get down hot dogs fast? How can I get the burps up without jumping and pack the food down? And so I came into this year with a lot of new strategies that had never come together fully in my practices. Like my practices blew, they sucked a lot. I was eating really low numbers, but somehow like at the finals after all those practices with techniques and all these different like tricks up my sleeve as far as like what to do when my throat got tired, like that's where it all came together. So really the to answer your very simple question in a very long way, like you just have to figure out the food itself and like in a 10-minute span like what obstacles you're going to face and how you're going to overcome them those obstacles at different points throughout. Like when your throat gets tired, how are you swallowing now? When you get your mouth backed up and you can't hard swallow, what are you using to get it down? Like if you get gas trapped, how are you getting the gas up? Like it's just all very weird specific things that you have to prepare for and hope it all comes together somehow.
Wow. Yeah, that stuff you don't even really think about how the gas comes up. Like,
Yeah. Like if you're gulping hot dogs, like you're gonna be swallowing air, so that's like the main
yeah.
problem.
Wow. And that really sucks about last year because I know was it just certain states that they didn't let travel, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like we didn't even know if the contest was happening, and a couple weeks before the 4th, they're like, "Hey, it's happening. Do you wanna be there?" And I'm like, "Yes," and they bought me the tickets, and then 10 days before the contest, Governor Cuomo's like, "Anyone from these specific states, if you come to New York, you have to quarantine for 14 days." And the fact that that was 10 days before the 4th of July made it literally impossible, logistically to make it happen, so I had to cancel my flights and
Oh,
call it a day. But I was out of practice anyway, so I guess it's all for the best, but
yeah, it's like you just missed it. But I mean, look at you this year, so.
I know, and it worked out really well. And my really close friend Mickey Sudo, who got first in previous years, 7-time champion,
Mhm.
was pregnant this year, so that made it even more fortuitous because she was not able to compete, and
Yeah.
so it made it basically mine for the losing. So it was like it should be mine, but if I can't get my stuff together, then it's someone else is going to take it because it would be my fault. So that was the anxiety I went into the contest with is like, if I lose today, it's totally on me. Like, there's no excuses.
Yeah. Well, you didn't lose, so.
Yeah. And that wave of relief right when I was done, I was like, thank God. Thank God.
I can imagine. Oh, that adrenaline, and then you're just like, "Ugh, thank God."
Yeah. So it was weird because I watched the replay and you can even see my face. It's like, it's over and I'm like relieved. And then all of a sudden it hits me. Oh, I just won the Nathan's contest. That's nuts. And then all of a sudden I get like weirdly emotional. Like,
Aw.
it's like, "Oh my god, what the hell just happened?"
That's normal. I mean, come on. You're like you said, you won the Super Bowl of competitive eating.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Mickey. That's a good segue into my next question. So how is it with fellow competitive eaters? Like when you went in there and you started doing this every year, or even not even just Nathan's, but other contests where you see a lot of the same competitive eaters, is it easy to just kind of become friends with them, or is there like how do you
Yeah.
handle the competitiveness between you guys?
So lucky for us, competitive eating is just as much like a you versus yourself sport as a you versus other people sport. Being independent, a solo sport like tennis or track or whatever, swimming, like you're just trying to improve on yourself, and whatever happens as the outcome of the contest, good or bad, like that's on you. So this year, that was part of the thing too, is like if I lose this year but hit a personal best, then you got to be okay with that. Like you've done all that you can, and props to the other people for like their improvements. But if you lose without hitting a personal best, that's on you for not bringing it. So at the table, we're all really competitive. We're all like vying for those spots. But then, like, you step away from the table and you found these really weird people that somehow fell into the same weird thing that you fell into. And then you just find out that they're all really like genuinely cool people. So a lot of times, you're traveling out. I've shared rooms with other people to split costs at contests where it's not paid for. I've road tripped with people to contests. Like we all hang out afterwards. Like if we're there a couple days, we might go out like every night besides pre-contest night. And you just build these friendships along the way. So like Mickey, first time I met her was at a qualifier in Vegas, and we had never heard of her before. Like I was the women's favorite at that one, and she just blew me out of the water. Like to my 24 hot dogs or whatever I was eating at the time, she ate like 30 something, and I was like, I hate her. Why couldn't you go literally anywhere else? But like you got to respect that. And so qualifiers are a little weird because you're meeting people you've never met before, so people don't really hang out after them as much. But when we met at the finals and like actually got to know each other, it's like, okay, I really like this person. This person's pretty awesome. And then like you said though, like you'll see them again like in different parts of the country, and you just get to explore like these new cities together.
So you guys actually go out and enjoy a normal meal, right?
Yeah, totally. Some of the competitive eaters are insane because, YouTube content and whatnot. Like, they'll go out the day after a contest and go do a pizza challenge or something in a nearby city. And I'm like, okay, if it's crawfish, I could do that because you're eating such a small amount of food in the time that you have just because it's a technique food. But I mean, if we just ate 11 pounds of poutine the day before, I'm not going to go do a pizza challenge. Like, I'm still waiting for all this to digest, and you guys are insane. so, so props to those people. But Jesus Christ, at some point, content isn't worth it.
I know it's all about the YouTube too nowadays. It wasn't
Yeah,
like that before when we were younger too. I mean, I feel like
yeah.
it's such a competitive world overall, Michelle, and you're over here eating hot dogs and just me like it's you're taking it and you're doing it, and that's cool.
Yeah, if you're going to compete in something, you might as well make it something ridiculous, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so you're in the Guinness Book of World Records. Let me tell
yeah.
you a funny story about that. I remember seeing something online about you being in there, and a little while later, like, I mean, I think it was like a week later, I found myself in a bookstore and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to go find the Guinness Book of World Records and just see if her name is in there. And I looked and you were listed, and I was showing my friend I was with. I'm like, you have no idea. I saw this happen. Like, I'm like, when she started doing this is crazy.
Was it, which book was it? Which year?
It was a few years ago. So I think it was the first time you were in it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it was just like a sentence at the bottom of the page, right?
Yeah, but still, I mean, it was your name.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I know. I was excited about that one too.
tell us about that. How many times are you in it, and for what?
So the first Guinness World Record I ever set, it was just like this weird happenstance thing that happened. So me having this like competitive eating background and doing it for years or whatever. I want to say this is in 2017 or 2018, I forget. But a local Arizona restaurant called Oregano's randomly emails me, and they're like, hey, we wanted to reach out to you because we heard that you like to do charity stuff and fundraisers and stuff, and that you're a competitive eater. And we have this annual thing called Carbs for a Cause, where every time someone eats a bowl of pasta or orders a bowl of pasta in a restaurant, we donate a pound of pasta to the food bank. And we were wondering, like, if you would help us promote this year's, and they're like, how much pasta can you eat? And I'm like, all right, hang on, time out. Let me reach out to Major League Eating and just like clear it through them that I'm allowed to do this, because, promoting businesses outside of like the contracted circuit is kind of iffy. But if it's a charity thing, usually like they'll approve it for you. So I get the clearance to promote Carbs for a Cause. And so I'm like, all right, so I can do this, but like, what are you actually looking for? Because to answer your question, I can eat a lot of pasta, but like, what is the end game here? And they're like, we just want something that will attract media attention to this week. And I'm like, all right, time out. And so I look online and I look for the Guinness World Record for anything related to pasta. And I find out that the fastest time to eat a bowl of pasta was like 46 seconds or something like that. And I was like, I could do that. And so I'm like, hey, so instead of, sitting in your restaurant and eating like 11 pounds of pasta, which sounds terrible, how about I just attempt this Guinness World Record? And they're like, perfect. Yes, let's do this. Do you think you could get it? Like, yeah. And so we went through the process, signed up for it, whatever, got out there, ate the bowl of pasta on my first attempt in like 26.69 seconds, I think it was, and got the Guinness World Record. And I think they ended up, the fundraiser went really well, and they donated more pasta than like ever before. It was like 100,000 meals of pasta. I forget the numbers, but to the food bank. So that was really cool. And it was for a good cause. And then I'm in this Guinness book, which was pretty awesome. And I was very excited about. But the other Guinness records just kind of stemmed from that. So like Guinness emails me one day and they're like, hey, we want to do like a feature picture of you for our next book. And we'll have an adjudicator on site. If you want to try any other challenges, just let us know and we can expedite it and you can just try it then and there. And so that led to my other two crazy ones, which were pretty weird for no reason.
The mayonnaise one, that's in there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So the most mayonnaise eaten in 3 minutes was just because when I went on Guinness and looked up like food records, that was one of the ones where I'm like, oh, yeah, there's something like 800 grams. I'm like, I don't hate mayonnaise. A lot of people hate mayonnaise. I at least don't hate it. So this is probably doable. And I was actually going to try to practice for that one. And I bought like a bunch of jars of mayonnaise and I literally got one like tablespoon scoop in. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to wing it because forget this. Not a delicious thing to do.
Yeah, and that video is intense. Like, if people want to see it, it's to YouTube. All you have to do is like you would search mayonnaise girl or something like that, right? And it comes up. Like,
Basically, yeah.
yeah.
And then the third one that I had was fastest time to eat a hot dog without using your hands. And that one I only did again because it was on there and it looked doable. But it was actually a lot harder than I thought because the hard part is smashing your face into the table to pick up a bun with your mouth. Like that's the hard part. It's not the eating it part. It's the logistically getting the stupid bun up that was the pain in the butt part.
Yeah.
I was gonna try a third one too while I was there, and it was fastest time to eat a muffin without using your hands or something like that. But us in America being total gluttons, myself excluded, obviously. No, we don't have muffins the right size. So the Guinness record had a cap where it was like 60 to 80 grams for a muffin. And you go to the store, the smallest muffin, swear to God, that I could find was 110 grams for a normal, what we call a muffin here. And mini muffins are 30 grams. So mini muffins were closer in size to like this record size muffin than our normal. So like I said, we're total pigs over here. Obviously myself excluded. I couldn't find one. I'm like, you know what, screw it. I'm probably going to take a couple attempts at this hot dog anyway, so I might as well just not eat anything. Because they were all on the same day, so I ate 3 hot dogs and drank water before the mayonnaise thing anyway, so.
What a story. That is insane.
Yeah. But to answer everyone's question that they always have of, like, why would I do the mayonnaise? Because it was there, and I wanted to know if I could do it. That's the whole
Yeah.
story of my life.
Yeah, you don't go into that thinking, oh, this is going to be delicious.
No, it got real gross, too.
Yeah.
The photo shoot was right after I set the records, and they wanted to do this picture of me holding a jar tilted like I was pouring it into my mouth. and it was mostly empty, but this glob of mayonnaise actually fell on my tongue
Oh,
during the photo shoot, and I was like, "Huh? Give me a minute. I just ate the mayonnaise. I can't, like, I gotta reset myself." It was super gross.
it sounds like it.
Yeah.
Okay, Michelle, we're going to talk more about your Nathan's hot dog eating contest experience. And we're also going to talk about other things about you, like what else you do besides shoving hot dogs in your mouth.
That's pretty much it. I'm just kidding.
We're going to talk more about that in a minute, but I wanted to take a moment for Love Letter Break. This is Love Letter Break. It's a break I take in each episode to ask my guest to come up with 1 to 3 people they'd like to mention who have made a difference in their lives, people they'd like to give a little message of gratitude to. So, Michelle, who are your Love Letter Break people, and what would you like to say to them?
Can I do this in groups, small groups?
Sure, yeah.
So obviously, since this is competitive eating themed episode, I have to dedicate one of these to Alex and Andrew. Andrew, who's I'm gonna cry, who's no longer with us. For
Right.
just getting me started on this whole thing, but just their friendship and support over the years too. But so yeah, it's gonna take me a minute. Give me a second.
Oh, of course, yeah. Yeah, no, I'm with you, Michelle. In the meantime, just to give everyone a little bit of background, Alex and Andrew are great guys who were in Race You There, which is the band that Michelle and I actually met through. And Andrew passed away last year, and he was still very young. So, of course, it's so difficult for so many people. But what helps me, I think, is remembering what he left behind, the lives he made better, the people he inspired. He was the type of person who had so much passion for what he did. You know, his music, the people he loved, the things he believed in. Yet, I think he also just enjoyed the simplicity of life. And I know, like Michelle was, he was definitely one of the people who helped me the most after I moved to Arizona back in the day and didn't know anyone. So I try to remember that, and I'm just so grateful to have shared that time with him. And I know he was a very special person to you, Michelle.
Yeah, he was one of my closest friends for over a decade. Like since the moment I met him. So to him, thank you for not just starting me on this weird competitive eating journey along with Alex, but just the friendship over the years and being there for me and to talk to. He was kind of my go-to whenever I needed to talk through something. So he was always really awesome. And then the next one's also going to make me cry. So my mom was there at the 4th of July this year. It was the first ever contest she had ever come to. And but she had always still found a way to be really supportive of the competitive eating stuff at home. My dad had been to several contests, basically anytime there was one near him, and then anytime I could get him there. So he came out to the Nathan's contest a couple years back, and I still hear his voice in my head when
Mhm.
like at the 4th of July, he would have been like, "That's my baby." Like, so he passed away also a couple years back. So I think those are my two major groups of people to thank specifically about this whole competitive eating thing.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that, Michelle.
To get through that without crying, like, yeah, it's hard.
So, that's the whole point of Love Letter Break. I started it because we don't tell people how much they mean to us enough. And obviously, there's people that have passed away, and we probably did tell them, like, I know you, Andrew, knew that, you adored him, and we all adored him when he was here. So that's not what I'm talking about. But there are some people that they are loved, but they're never really told until it's too
Yeah.
late, till they've passed on. And I always thought it was weird how we only do eulogies for people who are gone. It's like, what about when they're here? That was the whole point of this. And it's always good to hear that you're making a difference.
Totally.
So yeah, Alex and Andrew and your dad, I love it. Three very important people in your competitive eating career, but also in your life. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously. Thanks so much for sharing again.
Yeah.
I get it. I'm so sorry about your dad too.
We had a complicated relationship over our whole, life. He had
Mhm.
his own issues, but like towards the end, like we'd developed a really close relationship, and you know, it's always hard to lose someone who you talk to that frequently because then there's that, constant hole.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we all know, we're only here temporarily, but it kind of puts it back in the forefront of your mind. You're kind of like, okay, yeah, that's what being a human is, you
Yeah.
know.
Stupid mortality.
I don't know what you believe, but like, I definitely believe in like energy and that we go on in some way. I don't think this is it.
I mean, at the very least, your calories for something else. So
That's the best joke to put in for this episode. So when I watched you on TV at the Nathan's hot dog eating contest, that atmosphere is intense. And
yeah.
you did it for how many years? How many times have you been in that?
This was my 10th time. It would have been my 11th, had it not been for the year I had to take off for COVID.
Oh, wow.
But
Okay. You've been in that atmosphere 10 times.
yeah.
So let's talk about that experience. In the most recent one, you kept moving your body throughout the time you were shoving the hot dogs in your mouth and doing your thing, and you looked like you were in a zone. So what was that about? Is that like a special technique you do when you're moving your body? Is it to get it down quicker? Like what's going on there?
It's funny because for several of the minutes, I didn't feel like I was in a zone. Like I have ADHD, like pretty hard. So one of my things is like trying not to be distracted by the things around me, but inevitably, I feel like I hyper focus in on weird things that I shouldn't be worried about. So like my counter was off for the first couple minutes. He had me at one ahead of where I was or two ahead of where I was. He finally got it right at around the 11th hot dog. But so I was
Mhm.
like trying to ignore that, but it was like so hard to like ignore. I don't know. But so with the moving around thing, that's like I said, I had to develop new strategies this year, not only because I forgot muscle memory how to eat hot dogs, but because of my ACL. So a lot of that was trying to swallow hard. So there are certain ways that, your throat will swallow harder than, if you're doing other things. So part of that is getting your throat to swallow hard instead of like passively. And part of it was trying to keep the air worked up throughout so that I wouldn't have to worry about so much of it trapped. So bending down to keep the food moving around the air and like not getting this big bubble down at the end. And it turned out pretty good. Like it worked pretty well in the end. Like normally at the end of that many hot dogs, I would feel much more full. For me, I didn't hit a higher number because I ran out of time and not ran out of room. So the technique and strategy hasn't like perfectly come together, but I did feel a lot better this year than even after some years where I ate less. I took less water down and just I think was more efficient overall.
Nice. Now, I always wondered this too about the contest. When you're in the middle of it, the host or the MC or whoever is at whatever contest you're doing, they're shouting and keeping score. And sometimes they're telling the crowd in front of you that a fellow competitor is so close to reaching where you're at. And then other times they're like, you're way ahead of the game. And like, what is that like? Is that distracting or is that
Yeah.
motivating or both?
It's 100% distracting. It is motivating too at times. The crowd itself is super motivating. Like they got crazy this year. It was awesome. But I try to ignore to some extent what the announcers say because there have been years where they've been off because they're only as accurate as, the people around them at that moment. So there have been years where I thought I was five back from someone and I was one back. Like it was, well, and I felt defeated because like you feel like you can't catch up. Or there were years where they were saying someone was way further behind me when they weren't. So number wise, I've learned to mostly ignore what they say for specifics and know that it's a plus or minus, a certain amount in there. Um, but sometimes they'll just say hilarious things where you're just like, "What the hell are you talking about, George?" Like, so one of my practices this year, you can see them all on my YouTube page, but my buddy, fellow competitive eater that was at the table with me, had done a couple practices with me, and I called in my friend, who you probably know through the Racy there times. Did you ever meet AJ?
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
So I got AJ Salas, who has a Twitch stream. So I was in his Twitch stream. I'm like, hey, you want to come in and commentate on one of these practices I have? And he's like, oh, yes, definitely. And so I brought him in and I was like, at some points, tell us, how much time is left or whatever. But then basically go ham as far as whatever else you want to say. And it worked out really well because AJ's hilarious. And so having that in my practice, like someone saying random stuff that I'm going to be distracted by and like trying to focus it out while I'm eating was kind of one of my strategies this year. Prepare for the environment and the food, really.
Yeah. I remember just watching it and I'm like, "Oh my god." I'd be like, "Shut up, dude." No.
It's very distracting at times, but they come up with some gems, and I think for the crowd, it just makes it that much more of a weird, unique experience. Having this like carnival barker type of atmosphere, like he really does keep people engaged, and like the crowd responds fully. They were nuts. Like at times when I felt like I was slowing down, just like the roar of the crowd, I'm like, I got to keep pushing. Like this is crazy.
So, what did you do after your win? How did you celebrate?
So I pretty much like right after the contest, there's still a lot going on. So I went out and I cheered for the men in their contest, and I was stupid and screamed so hard for these stupid men that I lost my voice for like 3 days. And mind you, the next day I have to do all these interviews. So I'm at these interviews like, hey, sorry, I can't talk. I've been cheering for them. Like it was really bad. So that was part of it is going and cheering for them. High fives to the crowd, obviously. But there's always kind of like a unofficial after party at Coney Island at a place called Ruby's on the boardwalk. It's always packed, and you go there. It's hot, humid. There's like a fan running, but there's no AC. But a lot of the competitive eaters will just go sit there and talk and like hang out for a little bit before we jump on the subway or take the bus home or whatever. But getting to Ruby's on the boardwalk, which is probably half a mile from where we competed this year at Maimonides Park, it took me over an hour, like easily an hour and a half to get a half mile because every couple of feet, because I'm carrying this belt and I'm carrying this trophy. They're like, "Oh my god, you just won! I need a picture!" And it's Coney Island on the 4th of July, so you stop and you give every person a picture who wants a picture. It's just like the craziest fun experience, and then you just have to make sure that you don't do or say anything inappropriate because you're representing this entity at the moment. But it was crazy and it was fun. But the 4th of July in New York is there's a plethora of things to do. So that's just like the early moments post contest. Obviously, there's a after party and things like that too. But yeah, just riding this weird wave of like, oh my god, like this is my moment on the 4th of July in the best place to be. Like super awesome.
Yeah, so you just mentioned a little bit of this next question, but you're obviously getting a lot of attention with these amazing competitions that you're winning, or at least come close to winning. How have you been handling that? What's like the coolest experience you've had that you may not have had otherwise? And have you had any weird experiences?
So, like the Major League Eating thing has like really given me a ton of experiences that I never would have had. Like I was a poor kid growing up, like hella poor. So we never went anywhere. We didn't like I had always wanted to travel to certain places that I knew, as someone who was had no supplemental income and was paycheck to paycheck for so long, probably wasn't going to be traveling a lot in my life. And so that first trip out to Coney Island was like amazing. And then there have been contests later on that they've flown me out to that like I would have never imagined. So I got the chance to go on a Navy entertainment tour. It's part of their want to say MWR. It's their like basically the USO for the Navy.
Yeah.
But I got to go to Japan for 11 days and go to like 5 different bases and compete with service members in like this pro-am style thing where it was like competitor paired up with a service member against, 2 more teams of the same. And it was just so fun to explore a new country, but then also like hang out with the troops and like do something positive that way and like provide this weird little like memory for them.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, and when they first told me about it, like, legit, I'm not expecting these opportunities, so they go, "Hey, so we're doing this Navy entertainment tour, it's 11 days overseas, do you wanna do this?" And I was like, "Yes, definitely." And they're like, "Okay, it's gonna be this much," and I'm like, "Okay, when do I have that to you by?" And this is when I'm student teaching, so I have, like I'm bartending on weekends to try to make money because I'm no longer, substituting, like, long term in the classroom for income or whatever. So I'm trying to like, how am I going to get this together? And they're like, no, Michelle, we're giving you this much money. And I was like, are you insane? Because I was figuring out how to make this happen. Like I was going to make it happen. And so
Yeah.
that was crazy, like to be provided like a stipend for that sort of thing. But people have to take time off of work. So that's what that's all about. And I was just thinking like, how am I going to save up to make this happen? And then the other crazy one was I got to go to Northern Ireland twice for this oyster eating contest to Hillsborough, Northern Ireland. They had an oyster festival each year, and Colin Shirlow was the oyster king. And they had flown out some other competitive eaters over the years. So they flew me out there, put me up for free for this, gave me a win or lose stipend for it. And the first time out, Colin told me after the contest, he's like, I saw how fast you were going and I had to speed up. Like, you have to come out next year. So he still beat me, but he set his own like world record while doing it. And so they flew me out the next year, and Colin Shirlow, who was 10 years undefeated, I dethroned the Oyster King. Um,
Nice.
227 oysters in 3 minutes. So that was pretty amazing.
Wait, you ate
But
227 oysters?
yeah, in 3 minutes.
Oh
And
my
this one
god.
it wasn't like a oyster fork one. You have to pick up the oyster and like suck it out of the shell. And so he was 10 times undefeated because he was so methodical and mechanical, and he didn't fumble for a second. So you're eating more than an oyster per second, basically, is what it comes down to. So if you fumble for even a second, he's going to beat you. And so in that second year, knowing exactly what I needed to do, I had bought like 9 oysters the day before at like a little bar, and I cleaned the shells off and I took them home, and I was sitting in my hotel room all night picking up and putting down oysters, basically. Like
Yeah.
just not fumbling for a second, just like technique, total technique. And you don't have to like practice eating them because they're going to swallow down. You just got to not mess up. So that was super cool. But yeah, I got to go to Northern Ireland. Like, who gets to say that? Like, that someone paid their way out there to eat oysters. It's nuts. Me and Anthony Bourdain, probably the only 2 people.
Oh, that's awesome. So you never have gone out of the country before that, or?
No, well, I mean, I had been to Mexico with
Okay.
family as a kid. I think I had been up to Canada, but I had never been overseas in my life before those 2 trips, and I haven't outside of those 2 trips either.
Mhm.
To some extent, I'm still like a poor kid at heart. When I have extra money, a lot of times I'm donating it
Yeah.
either like the charity water stuff that I do with my practices, or like I don't know if you've heard of the Kiva app, but I love the Kiva app.
No, what is that?
So basically, have you ever seen the documentary "Living on a Dollar"? Where
No.
Oh, okay, so you have to watch that too. Basically, these guys go down, they live in South America on $1 a day, and it's randomized, so it averages out to $1 a day. But some days they might draw a number that says they get $6 that day to spend, and some days it might be zero. So basically, trying to live like these people do, day to day income. And what they found out got a lot of people through being able to survive were these microloans through these different nonprofits. So Kiva is an app that allows you to help finance those microloans for people who can potentially better their lives, but need that principal in order to do it. So they could potentially make more on their farm if only they could grow this thing and they can't afford the beans to do it or whatever. Or they could make more in this business if they could only afford to get this extra thing, but it's going to take them, forever to save up because they can't put aside money because they're living day to day. So Kiva is really cool. One of my favorite things to donate is for people who want to build sanitary latrines for their house so that the health of their family can improve,
Mhm.
or microloans for like things that are going to help them long term. But being as it's all microloans, you get to watch them pay it back, and then you get to take that money that was paid back to you and donate it out to the next person. So I love this app.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Anyways, and so being a poor kid, like a lot of times when I have extra money, it's going to those things because I'm like, look, I get what it is to struggle, and these people have it way worse off than I ever did. Like I'm walking to my sink and getting clean water out, and some people walking 10 miles a day for dirty water,
Mhm.
or don't have lights on or whatever. So any money that I have set aside, like I kind of feel bad about spending on myself for something so, I guess, unnecessary.
Yeah.
So having someone pay for a free trip, that's pretty much the only time I'm going to go out of the country.
Well, I mean, you definitely proved you earned it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your life outside of competitive eating. So, you've been a teacher. Do you still do that now, or do you do something else, or did you just devote all your time to competitive eating?
I wish that paid the bills. No, I am still a teacher. I teach eighth grade math at Roberts Naylor K8 in Tucson. And my school is the coolest. Like, it's in a part of town where a lot of refugees tend to live because of like resettlement agencies and stuff. So my population at my school, it's just so diverse. So I can look at the home languages of my students in one of my classes, and there could be 7 different home languages, some of which I had never heard of before working there. So it's just like the coolest dynamic in the classroom to see people from all over the world working together, some of which have had their whole lives of formal education, some of which are maybe having their second year of formal education as an eighth grader. So being able to work with them and make sure that no one leaves my class like afraid of math is my goal.
Oh, I wish I had you as a teacher when I had math.
Yeah.
I commend you for that. My gosh, math is not my subject. I know a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah, I'm trying to break that cycle.
Yeah. So tell us what your life is like apart from the competitive eating, preparation, all that. What is a day in the life of Michelle like?
It's pretty standard. I go to work probably more hours than I should. Because you always want like, I don't know, in anything I do, I don't want to like slack off on it. So something didn't go as well as I wanted to, want to change it for the next time. So I'm working a lot, taking on extra responsibilities. Like I do student council at the school too, and might have to take on yearbook. I do a like extra tutoring session. I also teach algebra to the eighth graders who are advanced. So there's a lot of time that gets put into that. And then outside of that, like it's just pretty standard. Like I'm hyperactive in general. So during the winter, I like to snowboard when I'm not busy tearing my ACL. I like to, go off and explore things. When we do long road trips, I always try to find like the weirdest things along the way to stop at. So just trying to keep my life interesting.
What do you mean by stopping where?
Oh, so there are some apps that I found along the way, and some of them are obsolete at this point, unfortunately. But like the Atlas Obscura app, you could be on a road trip from point A to point B, and it will show you the weirdest things along your route. So you're like, oh, we're going to stop here and see this house that someone made out of trash. Or there's just so many weird things on any road trip you could possibly take. So, if you're on a long drive, Atlas Obscura is a good one. Roadtrippers.com is a okay one, except for it's hard to filter through the really interesting stuff.
Mm,
But yeah, like why do something if you're not going to make it fun? Like
right.
I love road trips. Just find the weird stuff, guys. I don't know, the world's largest rabbit sculpture. Like I don't know.
Yeah. We're still getting out of the COVID pandemic. I know that it's been tough for so many people. How has it affected you? I know it affected you competing in Nathan's last year. How else has it
Yeah.
affected you?
Yeah, it's I think a lot of people could say this for themselves, but I'm the type of person who, if I am stuck somewhere and trapped somewhere or feeling trapped somewhere, it's like I can't get myself motivated to do anything. So it kind of puts you into that depression mode where it's hard to even like do your dishes, let alone like try to advance something. So props to the people making like sourdough starters and learning new languages. But like during the COVID year when I felt trapped in my house, it killed my motivation to do anything. So even like me having, a YouTube channel where sometimes I'd make random stuff and like speed eat 1950s disgusting jello mold monstrosity. I couldn't even get myself to do that. So I think for the whole year of being trapped, I had all this time in the world to do anything I wanted, and it destroyed it destroyed my motivation to do that. So basically, I was just, figuring out how to best online teach, and I had that part down to a science at least. So like the work stuff I was doing like went really well as far as like being able to keep the kids engaged online, but anything else in my life, I was like, well, I haven't gotten dressed today, so I'm not going to do a YouTube video, and I don't feel like getting dressed today, so there's that. How did it
Yeah.
affect you?
I worked from home on the weekends because it was so early in the morning when I worked, but I used to go in the office on the weekdays, and we went completely full time at home. And I was like, I love this. I love this. But it like does something to your motivation. I'm so used to walking a lot. I love walking, and I just stopped walking, and I was just feeling and like just everything, like the energy goes right out the window.
Yeah, and for me, like, when I would teach online, I would get dressed from the waist up, but I'm still, like, wearing sweatpants or, like
Yeah.
so then you're not, like, dressed to seize the day, and there's something about not getting dressed in the morning, I think is part of it, is part of not being able to go seize the day.
Yeah, it's psychological too. It's
Yeah.
where you're yeah.
It's probably why I tore my ACL because we went snowboarding once before the pandemic hit in 2019, and then when we went in 2020, I was pretty sure it was the only time we were gonna go, and so I was like, screw it." Normally, I would be cautious, but if I'm not going again this year, then who cares if I get hurt? And,
Mm.
yeah, took a jump I probably shouldn't have taken during the conditions we were in, but whatever.
Yeah, I remember too, I kept having, like, lower back pain and just feeling
Yeah.
very my gosh, I know I'm getting older, but I'm not that old yet, like and I went to the doctor and they're just like, "Yeah, it's because you've been working from home and you're, like, slumped over on the computer all day." It's crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Also, you're old. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. No, I am. You're older, though. All right. So I know you mentioned your charity work a little bit, but I wanted to dig a little deeper into that because I remember since I've known you, even before you started your competitive eating journey, you've always made sure to do your part and make the world better in some way. And I know you used to raise money for clean water in the places where it wasn't available or limited. You still do that, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it all started when I was doing the AmeriCorps stuff. I had this program after school with these kids who were all like super awesome in like wanting to take on responsibility to make things happen. And we used to focus on a different issue like each month and figure out how to fix it. And then the one that I really like that really spoke to me was the global water crisis. And so at the time that I knew you, that was probably around the time of the World Water Walk that we put on, where we raised a couple $1,000s by holding this walkathon where we made people carry these jugs of water for like 5K in the Arizona heat
Ugh.
to just give them a glimpse of what it's like every day for these other people. So that one really stuck with me, especially once I started dunking hot dogs in or hot dog buns in clean water from my faucet. I'm like, this is my use of clean water because it's never ending here. Like any day that I want to. I could scoop clean water out of my toilet if I wanted to and it's still better off than a lot of people in the world. So that was a really easy connection to make as far as like this use of clean water I have and wanting other people to just get clean water for their lives. So I think over the last 11 years, raised something like $22,000 for charity water.
Wow.
That's the statistic. I just looked it up the other day because I was curious.
That's awesome. Are you involved in any other kind of charities or just the water?
Well, that's my favorite one. Just like
Mhm.
I said, it seemed really fitting. And also, what I like about it is you can do a charity water campaign online, and 100% of the donations that people give go directly to the field to build wells and other water filtration sources, because all of their overhead is private donors from their like gala events and other things they do. So I think that motivates a lot of people to donate who normally wouldn't, because a lot of people don't like the idea of, for whatever reason, don't like the idea of paying any overhead for a nonprofit. It's like, well, they got to stay afloat somehow. But I think certain charities over the years have kind of ruined it for everyone, because you hear about like the CEOs that make like
Mm,
millions of dollars
yeah.
or whatever. So people get wary. And so that's one of the reasons I love charity water. But over the years, I've done fundraisers for like Breast Cancer Research Foundation, for Equine Voices, which is a horse rescue out here in Arizona, for St. Jude's and brain cancer and just like all kinds of things. But for me, it always comes back to the whole charity water thing.
Yeah. So, do you have a place people can go if they want to donate, or like a just somewhere you can refer them to?
One place that people can go is charitywater.org/cardboard shell. And that'll take you kind of to the main ever going page. As I do each campaign, it becomes charitywater.org/cardboard shell/name of the campaign. But if you just go in to /cardboard shell, you'll see in the side like whether I'm running a current campaign at that time and a button to donate then. So yeah, I'm looking at it now, and lifetime impact from these fundraisers was $22.3 thousand, and that's basically enough to get 762 people clean water for life, which is pretty awesome.
That is awesome. Yeah, so everybody check that out.
And then the great part is you also get to see all the different campaigns or all the different wells and projects that you funded. So they show you pictures of one from like Mozambique or Bangladesh or Mali or Uganda, and you can see like where the money from a specific campaign went to and like the people benefiting from it, which I also think is really, really awesome.
That's so cool. So, as a person who's seen success in recent years, what's your stance of the world right now? What have you seen from humankind that you feel is helping make the world a better place? And what are some of the difficult things that you've seen? Like, how do you think humans can improve overall?
Oh man. All right, give me a second. Scooch my chair up. Um, No, I like just general kindness. Like it's a lot of people have it and it's so refreshing to see, and just like seeing people be good to each other, like that's such a great thing. And seeing people be terrible to each other is such an unnecessary evil. Like why? Why be mean to anyone? Like doesn't matter if someone's acting a little bit strangely on the street, like you don't have to comment on it or be mean to that person. Like doesn't matter if someone cut you off in traffic. Like I'm sure you've cut people off in traffic. Let it slide, bro. Like no need to be a Karen about everything. Um but oh, one of the hilarious things to me too is coming from a background of nonprofit stuff, there are very specific causes and reasons for hunger in the world. Lack of food distribution resources, infrastructure to get food to places that need it. It's never been about like a shortage of food on the planet. And it's always been a lack of like infrastructure and resources and food deserts in certain places. So when people say, oh, they're holding this hot dog contest, oh, there's starving people in the world, it's like, bro,
Hmm.
what have you done to help starving people in the world? Like you've complained about something without actually realizing that you have all the power in your hands to make a difference in this at this moment, and complaining about this contest, not doing it. Like you literally affected nothing with that comment. But you could have gone and donated $100 to the food bank instead of making that comment. Like if you don't have the $100, go donate your time at the food bank. Go, help start a community garden. Like there's things you could do. And Nathan's Hot Dogs donates $100,000 to the food bank, or 100,000 hot dogs to the food bank every year that we have this contest. So they've done more while holding this gluttonous feast that looks bad from the outset
Mm,
than you're
yeah.
doing in your like online troll mode. I don't know. So that bothers me too is when people, complain about the way the world is without just looking into the small ways you could make a difference and like do something positive. They're throwing negativity out instead of helping be part of the solution. And that bothers me every time, but to each their own.
Yeah, no, it's true. Especially with the internet too. I feel like that's an outlet for so many people to just express frustrations about other people instead of actually looking at themselves. And
Yeah, it's a great place where you could just jump to conclusions and then shout out your conclusions.
yeah, and I mean, all of it, if you think about it, really derives from insecurity. Whenever you're talking about somebody else that you don't even know, from the little you see, I mean, and you're so obsessed with it, I mean, you have to look at yourself and be like, well, what are you trying to run away from yourself? You know?
Yeah,
None of us are perfect. We all have
I
issues.
am. I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
of course you are. I mean, look at you. It's like no, but you are a good human, and that's what we should all strive to be. We're all assholes sometimes. I mean, come on, think about it. Like, we can all be idiots and just be like, "Oh, you're so judgmental." And obviously, it's just part of what we learn as a kid, and just we try to get out of those, break those cycles. I think at the end of the day, it's just making a difference. Obviously, none of us know how we came to be. If you believe in the afterlife, if you don't, but if you're looking at it from what you remember or what you know as a human, it's like you're here for a reason and just make the best of it. Like we're all the same, we're all equal.
Yeah. It's all about, empathy, and if you're a religious person, the golden rule of treating others how you want to be treated. But more than that, like treating others how people just deserve to be treated for being an existing person with feelings and thoughts. Like I've known people who have this outer persona where they might lash out at people, or they might be quick to, I don't know, like might not do the nicest things first. But
Mhm.
a lot of times that's just because they're so used to rejection and people being mean to them that it becomes a defense mechanism of, well, I am rejecting this person first, and I am going to be mean first, and so then when if they do it later it can't hurt me. And so, like, even just recognizing when someone's behavior is kind of untoward, to go old school, be kind to them and just like recognize they're a person and know that that's coming from somewhere, and that like it's really easy to still start a kind experience with them. And, if you approach them with kindness, a lot of times they'll be like, oh, you aren't going to do the thing I expected, and cool, like I can have a friendship out of this instead of feeling the need to have these protective walls up all the time. So just be nice.
Yeah, be nice. You should have become a psychologist, Michelle. Imagine becoming a competitive eating psychologist.
Yeah.
No, I love it. Everything you're saying is so true. What's something as Michelle, as a person, like the humans we were just talking about, as Michelle the human, what's something that you struggle with the most and how do you help yourself get through that?
Oh god, I'm a lazy person at heart when it comes to anything having to do with myself. So I can go above and beyond for work and for other people and dedicate, 100 hours into researching this thing for this one person and like whatever. But when it comes to something that's just for me, it is so hard to put in that kind of like time and dedication. And I don't know why that is, but basically that's been my whole life. So even like me being a lazy piece of crap when it comes to training for some of my competitive eating contests, that's just cuz that's for me and my goals, and maybe I spent that time, I don't know. It's a weird thing.
Mhm.
Like helping my friend figure out what doctors are on their healthcare plan and calling up around until they had found a doctor on their plan to be their primary care physician. I've literally done that for people. I have never had a primary care physician in my life.
Wow.
I can't get myself to do it for myself and just like find someone and like just do it's so stupid. And I know that, but I can't get myself to do things for me.
Yeah. No, it sounds like you need to look at yourself like here comes the psychology thing again. You need to kind of look at yourself probably like a little girl and say, "Would you treat little Michelle this way?" No, you wouldn't.
Like the flip side of even now that I'm laughing about it of what I just said, where it's like treat people how you want to be treated. Maybe I
Yeah,
need to treat myself how I would treat other people.
exactly. That's such a common thing. So many people that do so much for the world and other people don't do it for themselves. And it's like you got to find that balance because you're just as important as those other people you're helping.
It's like the airplane, put on your mask before you help
Yeah.
anyone else.
Yeah.
Flight attendant, thanks.
It's true though. So basically you need to love yourself more and treat yourself nicer.
Yeah, probably. I'll find time for it.
Okay. So as far as your future plans, do you plan on competing to capture the title again at Nathan's next year or do you have any other eating competitions?
Mickey was still there on the 4th of July and she got to be a commentator this year. So after the contest, I ran into her in the halls of like the stadium. And I was like, this belt is kind of addictive. I don't know if I'm going to let you have it next year. So, I mean, theoretically, I could start training now and get my numbers really good. But doubling back to what we were just talking about, whether I will do that for myself is yet to be determined. But, the COVID year was rough for competitive eating. A lot of contests were canceled because they tend to be, venues that draw big crowds and things that the events themselves may have been canceled, like the festival that it was held at or whatever. So this year, I mean, I'm looking forward to things, for lack of a better term, coming back to normal. There being more contests. Hopefully, a lot of those ones that we had 2 years ago come back and exist again because throughout the year, there are some really cool contests. Gyoza eating contest down in Little Tokyo in LA for Nisei Week is always really fun. Hooters wing eating contest is always really fun. And each one of those, is another opportunity to fundraise for some other cause and things like that. So that's the extra bonus. But really, I just miss seeing my friends and competing and exploring parts of the country. So I don't know what contests are coming up next yet, but I'm looking forward to doing as many of them as I can because I'm so tired of being home.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so here's one I don't normally ask people because it can be a bit mundane, but I feel like it's appropriate for you. What is your favorite food?
Oh man, I think that it is usually chicken wings. I love chicken wings. They're my
Ooh.
favorite. And then it works out really well because that's one of the foods where, like, if I was going to eat a hot dog on the street for whatever reason, I wouldn't pick it up off the street, clearly. But if I was going to eat a hot dog normally in my daily life, I'd probably put some condiments on it and, like, eat it like a normal person. But chicken wings, I don't know what it is. Like, anytime I eat a chicken wing, I just eat it the same way I do when I'm in a contest. Like, you break a certain part of the bone, you slide it off, you've got the whole like wing in your mouth within seconds, and it's gone. Because that's just I brought that from my life to the contest instead of vice versa. So I don't know. That's a fun one just to eat in general because it's like you're training without training. But the spiciest chicken wings, the better. Or sometimes just like a good honey mustard flavor is good too. I don't know.
Ooh. Yeah, I like the Parmesan ones.
Oh yeah, those are good too.
Do you have a favorite chicken wing place?
I mean, I've had them in the past. A lot of them have since closed down. Some of the best wings in Tucson, I think it's closed now, but were Wings Over Broadway.
Ooh.
There's a Wings and Rice place, and it's probably one of my favorite restaurants in Tucson, just because it's so weird and eclectic, and it's so similar to like a place you would find in other cities, and just totally unknown. But basically, they have like a really good fried rice with like a special sauce on them. But they also have chicken wings of all kinds of different flavors. You could also get like a Philly cheesesteak sandwich, and you can get like, I don't know, their menu is so eclectic and weird, but I love it. And they have really good wings.
Nice.
If you're in Tucson, Wings and Rice, go find it.
Wings and rice. Do you know the address?
I think it's Pima. I think it's
There's Google now. We don't need you to know the address.
yeah.
All right. Wrapping up here. If people want to learn more about you or possibly interact with you if you're nice, which you are, how would they do that? Do you have a website? Do you want to give your social media?
Social security number? I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
no.
No, so I have a YouTube page and it's Cardboard Shell Eats. I have a Facebook, which is also Cardboard Shell Eats. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. I think both of those are just Cardboard Shell. I do have a blog that I haven't looked at in probably close to 8 years. Um, but yeah, come find me on the interwebs. Come find me on Twitter, and then hey, while you're there, retweet the thing that I sent to Conan O'Brien so that he calls me on his show because
Oh,
that'd be up.
yeah.
Yeah, I have jokingly said that. Well, I fully jokingly said that the only reason I won was because I wanted to go on the Conan O'Brien show. And I was like, but then he ends it, so I guess I'm just gonna throw this belt in the trash.
Oh, yeah, Conan's awesome. Have you ever seen him live?
No, I always wanted to, and I had so many kind of pseudo opportunities that never panned out.
Uh,
But
yeah, I saw him twice. He is so funny, and he's so tall in person.
he's my absolute favorite. I love him.
Alright, so wait, you mentioned Cardboard Shell, which is your nickname. Quickly tell us how you got that nickname, because I know it's food related.
It kind of is, and it's kind of not. So it has a food related backstory that's totally fake. Are you ready for the fake
Oh,
backstory?
it's a fake one, okay, so lying to the media, Michelle.
Yep. So crazy legs Conti uh tells people now that it's because when I order takeout, all that's left is the cardboard shell.
Yeah, that's the
That's
one
the
I heard. That's wrong then, that's a lie?
And I used to tell the real backstory, but it's so like boring and doesn't make any sense. So people would just leave anticlimactically sad. I don't know. So the real story is when I started doing those burger challenges, I had at that point been working at the Volunteer Center of Southern Arizona doing the AmeriCorps stuff, working with kids. And sometimes some of them would try to like friend request me on MySpace back in the day. And I felt bad because it's like you don't want to cross that professional boundary with people under the age of 18, obviously. Um, and I didn't want to whitewash my social media page and like take off all the stuff that was like true to me. So I ended up just changing my MySpace to be Cardboard Shell, which I thought was funny as a kind of pseudo spinoff of a Jack Handy Deep Thoughts quote. Um, so it was something like I walked outside today and stepped on a snail, and I thought about how I was kind of like that snail. We both have a sort of shell, but mine's made of tinfoil and paper bags. Is basically the quote. And I thought that was funny, and it kind of led me to like this cardboard shell type of spin off of that quote. But then when I started doing the competitive eating stuff, obviously I'm posting it on this like secret pseudonym MySpace page. And then the Tucson Weekly does a story on me, and they're like, Michelle Lesco, aka Cardboard Shell. And I was kind of like, no, those are separate worlds. But I'm like, I guess this is my competitive eating nickname now. It's the worst nickname in competitive eating. It meant nothing until my good friend Crazy Legs Conti, fellow competitive eater, created a fake backstory for it. So that is the long anticlimactic story of why Cardboard Shell is my terrible competitive eating nickname.
Wow, I really thought that story was true. That's a good one.
And I used to tell both, but I'm like, they don't care. I'm just going to tell them this fake short one. But since you were there during that time, I figured I would grace you with a full stupid story.
Nice. That reminds me of the Cardboard Shell name reminds me of I forgot the not coming to me, but it's like that little shell that talks, like on YouTube. It's a snail. Oh, there's a name. I forgot the name of it, but it's like a little tiny snail, and they put little like fake eyes on it, and it gave it a voice, and it's hilarious.
I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
It had some good advice on there too. It's about being kind to people and stuff. Okay, Michelle, I'm going to ask you a question that I ask every guest at the end of each episode. And that is if you could say only one more sentence or phrase out loud for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Now, here's my question back to you.
Okay.
Is this a phrase that I can continue to say every time someone talks to me? Or is this like my final words and then I'm mute for the rest of my life?
Well, the second, because it was actually inspired by the social anxiety disorder I had, where I didn't speak out loud as a kid. Had this massive anxiety disorder. I thought it would be kind of interesting to see, like, people think, well, if I can never speak again, what would the last sentence or phrase be that I could tell people that would make a difference?
Part of me wants to be real literal and be like, my last word or phrase would be, can you please bring me a paper and pencil?
I love it.
But I guess part of it would be like, depends on who I was talking to because, like, the last words you ever want someone to hear from you would have to be something like positive and that you love them and you don't want to leave anything unsaid for the rest of your life. So, more real talk, I kind of think of it more as like, knowing the last time I saw my dad wasn't like I didn't know it was going to be the last time I saw him.
Mhm.
So, thinking about like words you want to leave people with, like, kind of takes it to a different level. So just something, positive that you care about people and stuff, but more logistically accurate. Please get me a paper and pencil.
I love it. All right. Thank you so much, Michelle, for being here with me and sharing your story. It's been so fun catching up with you again. And I can't wait to see what else you have in store, not just for the competitive eating world, but the world in general, because you're such a kind person who doesn't do kind things for herself, but we'll overlook that for a minute. But really, you're an incredible person, and I'm wishing you all the best now and in the future. And I hope to see you again in person because it's been too long. But
Yeah, seriously. Come down to Gyoza contest if it's down there in LA.
I will, yeah. But thank you so much for being here and for sharing everything. Congratulations again on your big win.
Thank you. It was great catching up.
Thank you guys for listening to another episode. I'd like to remind you to please rate, share, and subscribe if you can. That'll help others to find the podcast more easily, and it'll help me to keep bringing you awesome content. If you want to know more about me or the podcast, you can visit eringlow.com. I'm also on most social media at eringlow. As always, I'd like to end the episode with a relative inspirational quote. And since we had a professional competitive eater on this episode, this quote is food themed, and it's from Mark Twain. Part of the secret of success in life is to eat what you like and let the food fight it out inside. I'll catch you guys right back here for the next episode very soon. In the meantime, I hope you all glow and shine bright.